Hi everyone. This is the first part of this series of videos that will teach you about weight loss nutrition. This will go through some of the big ideas behind how you lose weight using different food groups to get to your goal. So throughout these talks, I will return to this picture. And these are two meals that have opposite effects on weight and on health for the most part. So on the right side, you have a restaurant meal that is very high fat, has a lot of variety in the different foods, and variety can cause you to eat more. There's very high sugar here, so in that drink on the right side, and then there's a lot of saturated fat combined with sugar in that dessert that you see here. So this is a situation where you are going to overeat. Even the potatoes, which are actually quite healthy, are covered in other things that are high fat or they're fried. On the left side, in contrast, you have a meal that's very big. For how big it is, it's very low in energy, low in calories. For how many calories are in it, you get very full. You get a lot of bang for your buck in terms of fullness from a lot of foods here. And finally, there are things here that have almost no calories. Many fruits, really all vegetables and many fruits are just water and vitamins. So you have a meal that, if you want to reduce how many calories you're eating, this is perfectly designed for that. And I'll really explain this more over these next videos. So let's start with the opposite of a weight-losing diet. And so it's really the ultimate Western diet. It is meats and sweets. These are two food groups that are very high in all industrialized countries. So they're confectionaries and combinations of fat with sugar and added preservatives and different junk. The foods on the right side are very easy to go over your calories. Now the foods on the left side, the proteins and dairy and eggs and chicken and fish and all those foods, these foods are actually partly responsible for why people crave sweets. There is a meats and sweets association. You have a high amount of protein. You tend to have very high cravings for junk foods. And so the food category on the left is actually one of the causes of eating more of the foods on the right. This is what we see all the time in our patients. And this is actually what's been demonstrated in several studies. So what we don't want you to do, what I don't want you to do, is to do this variation of low carb, high protein, which is what everyone seems to do when they try to lose weight. They go from meats and sweets to fewer sweets and more vegetables and more technically low fat protein, more chicken typically, more fish. And they will do this. And depending on where they're starting from, they might lose some weight. If you are eating every meal in the mall food court and you go home and you make chicken and broccoli, you will definitely lose some weight. And there's a number of things that will cause that, but you tend to plateau. The weight loss stops pretty quickly. And you get really, really stuck there. And I think one of the main reasons, perhaps the main reason why this doesn't work for most people, is they never really get control over hunger. The composition of different foods here just doesn't do its job. It doesn't control sweet cravings. And so you tend to seesaw back and forth between more meats and sweets, and then vegetables, protein, and sweets, just less sweets. And there's a back and forth, and people inevitably come to the same conclusion when they do this, is when they backslide because their hunger is not controlled or they have too many cravings, they gain weight, and their solution is to, once again, cut carbs. and go back to this very same spot from which you really can't move unless you're really, really physically active, like an athlete, basically. So this is the trap. This is where everyone lands, and it's largely from the messaging that we hear all the time. It is also, from diet, healthy diet messaging, food marketing, and also just misunderstanding of nutrition studies. There's been a lot done since this was a popular idea, and we know it doesn't work. And there's the backslide, as I said. You go from more chicken, more broccoli, back to more high-fat proteins and more cookies, and you regain the weight. And then you go back, you cut the carbs, and you go back to protein, vegetables, and sweets, just less sweets. Back and forth, back and forth. So let me introduce you to the opposite of that. And this is the first major point here. The perfect plate for weight loss is the exact opposite of meats and sweets. The carbs are not confectionaries like scones and ice cream, which are more accurately sources of fat and sugar. The carbs are healthy carbs, and I will explain what those are more and more. Half the plate's healthy carbs, half the plate's vegetables or fruits, or both. This is perfect, but you don't have to be perfect. You just need to know what it looks like for now. So healthy carbs is a big category of foods. Within healthy carbs, there are power carbs, which I'll explain. Those are especially helpful foods for weight loss. This also includes what I call light, healthy carbs, which can be used very nicely for weight loss. I see it all the time. And this is white rice, white bread that's high quality, and white pasta. These are helpful foods. You can use them to lose weight, and I'll explain how. So what I'm saying about nutrition and really weight is not controversial really at all at this point. If you look for it, if you look at medical organization guidelines, national guidelines, for China, for England, for the US, kind of developed countries all over the world that have this, it all kind of looks the same. It's a whole food diet, plenty of fruits and vegetables. People don't need to be convinced that those are healthy, so they're there. But most of the plate, most of it, is what I call healthy carbs and power carbs. So going from about 2 o'clock around to about 7 o'clock there on the plate, you've got chickpeas, kidney beans, lentils, pasta, bread, wild rice, brown rice, quinoa, peas, potatoes, and what looks like butternut squash. Most of the energy in this plate is coming from carbs. That's literally your energy source for living. That's where most of your energy is coming from. And that's what's really different about this plate of food compared to how most Americans eat and most folks in westernized countries. So this is normal food. This is admittedly humble food. It turns out that humble is healthy. This is not the food typically of celebrations or weddings or just going out to fine dining. This is not what people order. But it is real food. And it's food that's been around for forever. And every culture has had some kind of carb or several types of carbs, grains or legumes or potatoes or pasta, and some combination of these things as sort of the basis of the energy for the country for a very long time. And that was a very healthy way to live. But with westernization and industrial agriculture and the efficiency that we can, raise animals and such, our diet has changed, and people went away from eating more humbly to eating a diet that's meats and sweets. So within healthy carbs, there are power carbs. These foods are the most important, I think, for people to add to their diet. This is the food group that this is the only food group that's been shown very consistently to lead to weight loss on average when it's just added to the diet. Nothing else changes. You just add 2 servings of oats per day or 2 potatoes. You get more of your energy from this food group, like on that healthy plate, and you can start weight loss. You can eat to fullness and you can start weight loss. You're not going to have the same effect from the addition of any other food group, really. Light, healthy carbs also can help, and I'll talk about those next. So legumes, lentils, chickpeas, and beans. Whole grains is corn, oats, brown rice, quinoa, things like barley. And potatoes are potatoes. So light, healthy carbs are pasta, high-quality white bread without a bunch of added junk and preservatives, and white rice. These foods just have to be handled with care, and you can think of them functionally as when you're trying to lose weight, these are foods to help you do 2 things. The first is eat more vegetables. The second is to eat more legumes. So to the extent that you add white beans to pasta, or you have some peas and some vegetables and some corn with rice, white rice, or you have a really nice vegetable sandwich. You really load up on the veggies, you go light on the fat, but you don't have to avoid it entirely. But if any of these food groups is helping you to eat more legumes or vegetables, and you have a high proportion of vegetables or legumes, or both, they are very helpful for weight loss. They are very enjoyable. They are wonderful foods. Things change at a restaurant, of course, with these light, healthy carbs. You add enough fat, you change what's on it, and you can overeat. But when you use them in this way, they're helpful for weight loss, without question. So, the veggies are fairly crucial. I would say they're, after light, healthy carbs and getting in power carbs, it's really the veggies and many of the fruits that are the ones that you can change further to lose more weight. So vegetables are essentially water and vitamins and minerals. They really don't have calories, especially calories that you can really use well. It's hard to get them out of vegetables and fruits, or rather vegetables. And so this is food you can literally crowd onto your plate so that you get fullness without adding any calories. And because they are so low calorie, you don't have to worry too much about using a little bit of oil or a little bit of cheese. Try to go very light, but don't worry about it because you're putting those calories on top of a big plate of vegetables that has no calories. And the volume makes you full. So maximizing veggies on this plate as part of this diet is quite important. So all fruits are wonderful. They don't turn into sugar, not the way people imagine they do. They don't cause diabetes. They're not even a problem for blood sugar, really, because that just doesn't make any sense. Because for how many calories are in fruit, you would have to eat so many of them for them to contribute to weight gain. A person who's 200 pounds would have to eat 2 gallons of berries just to meet their calories. If they couldn't do that, they would lose weight eating berries. And it's similar to really all fruits. I emphasize power fruits as being berries, bananas, apples, other tree fruits, citrus, melon. mainly because these foods have properties, I think fullness properties and the amount of sugar that makes them especially helpful for weight loss. Sort of less powerful fruits, and really this just depends on when you eat them, might be sugary ones, so grapes, mango, or pineapple. But really the worst that can happen with these other fruits here is that I think if you just eat a lot of them, like late in the day, in the evening, I think you can run into a place where it's slowing weight loss or holding you at the same weight. But I really think only in that stance does it become a problem. And even then, it's not a cause of weight gain. I just don't think that's possible. But a pitfall that I've seen people do is they kind of I think they hear the word carb and their mind goes in a lot of different places. And the main change starts to be just adding more rice to what they're already eating. They may gravitate towards carb products like cereals and snacks and all of which really can't, all that stuff at best it's going to hold you at the same weight and may even be weight gaining. So this sort of start to eating like this, where you just have more rice, you just add pasta, you just add light, healthy carbs, but you don't add any vegetables, you don't diversify and get some power carbs. This will certainly hold you at the same weight, but it may even be something that causes weight gain. I have seen that. And when you're talking about healthy carbs, they're all incredibly low fat. The highest fat one, I think, is quinoa, which is 15% fat calories, which is still incredibly low. The average American eats about 37 to 40% of his or her diet from fat calories. And so a bunch of quinoa at 15% is not going to do anything except cause weight loss. So it's really not the carb in situations like you see here with pasta. That's the issue. That lasagna on the right side is without question over half the energy from fat. So call it a carb if you want, but if you're going to call it what you're actually getting, it's a fat. You're eating a fat. On the left side, you can take a quarter cup of olive oil and add it to a cooked regular sized cooked box of pasta, add a lot of veggies and fruits, and the meal is going to be 20% or less fat calories, 20% or fewer in fat calories, compared to the probably 55% fat calories on the right. So, pasta is kind of an innocent bystander, and light, healthy carbs can be used for weight loss, or they can be part of very weight-gaining meals. So those are the big food groups and some of the big ideas about the diet pattern, but there's a few other related points. So the first is home cooking. If you rely on restaurants and takeout foods, I think at best it's sort of a slow weight loss if you're really, really careful. But for most, it's a rapidly weight-gaining practice. And it's just because of the amount of calories, which is driven by the amount of fat and the portions and all this stuff. So home-cooked foods, for the vast majority of people who can't afford to, buy customized meals and delivery services, home-cooked foods are going to be the foundation. And without that foundation, it can be hard. And if you're working towards that, if you're say you're starting from a place where you're eating restaurants all the time, your priority, forget about the foods, your priority would be just to cook at home more. Because that change alone, for many people, is going to lead to somewhere between 5 and 10 and 15% weight loss, just from going to restaurants to home cooked. That's how important it is. So if you're not ready to change food groups, but you're ready to cook more at home, that is plenty. And that's why it's so foundational. Once you're here, once you're close to here, then you can start to modify things and move forward. So I'll talk about restaurants, I'll talk about junk foods in a little bit of detail, but I think people kind of have a sense about this food group, so I'll be very brief about some of the details at one of the later parts. So we talked about the food groups, we talked about home cooked. The third point is about eating to fullness. So we know very, very well now how you can eat to fullness and lose weight eating to fullness, not being hungry. The changes I describe that are part of our program are one direction that works, that we know works. The other direction is very different. It's called Atkins or keto, true low carb. I'll have a separate video about what keto is, because that's really important to understand. But basically, you've got keto, very low carb, and you have what I'm describing, which is actually very high carbohydrate, but high quality carbohydrate. So you can eat to fullness. For some people, we may have to kind of tailor the proportions of things, more fruits and veggies, for example, more filling, healthy carbs. And somewhere there's a plate for everyone to eat to fullness and lose weight. The final idea is just eating early-ish, as best you can. This is primarily just to avoid the situation where you are not eating anything during the day. Maybe you're very, very busy. You take care of a family, you work more than one job, you work the night shift, your stress level's high, your mental health isn't quite where you'd like it to be, and you don't eat during the day. You get through the day, you drink coffee, maybe you don't. But by the time the evening comes around, what you're dealing with at this point is biology. Your stress hormones and your hunger hormones are very, very high. And you tend to have a huge portion of food, far more than you would have had if you had been able to get more energy earlier in the day, which controls those hormones. So, as best you can, don't have to do it all the time. You don't have to stop eating after this time, but just try to get some calories in before 4 p.m. as often as you can. And if you're able to, make one of your earlier meals your biggest meal, like a huge lunch. It's like eating to lose weight, eating more to lose weight. You can treat one of your early meals like that whenever hunger hits you, whether it's 8 a.m. or 1 p.m. or even 4 p.m. or 4:15. That's fine. This is a rough cutoff. Whenever you get that hunger, embrace it. Plan for it. Maybe this is the one meal that you really focus on for now, is that one big meal before 4 p.m. It's fine to eat after 4 p.m. There's some caveats to that, of course, the types of foods and how late you have them, but it's not about stopping at 4 p.m. And hopefully this kind of approach is flexible and sustainable, because that's really the idea here, is to do something that's going to last. Your weight is determined by two things: foods you're eating, your diet habits, and your physical activity habits. There's, of course, variations based on people's genes, certain genes. But when you have the dietary habits in place, you really are able to do everything else and have it work. So if your diet's good enough, weight loss meds work better. If your diet is good, exercise actually starts to contribute to weight loss. So take your time getting there, and it's a wonderful place to be because you have a lot of control and agency, really, to get to your goal. So the aim is that it's sustainable. It's incredibly important. So take your time,